This strategy made me and many of my students thousands of dollars, and today I'm going to show you exactly how you can copy me and exploit one of the most common mistakes you'll see at 1-2 and 1-3 tables. This strategy is so reliable that once you learn it, you'll actually get excited when opponents make this play against you. And the best part, it's incredibly easy to spot and even easier to exploit. So let's jump right into it. So, what is this mysterious mistake so many players make at the live low stakes? Here's a simple example. A player limps in middle position, we raise on the button, he calls. The flop comes King 9-4 rainbow. This is a spot where the limper should check his entire range to the aggressor because this board hits the aggressor's range well. But that's not how most recreational poker players think. They look at the 9-7 suited in their hand and at the board and they'll think, I have second pair, I'll bet to find out where I'm at. It's like asking, how deep is this pool by jumping in head first? And that's the big mistake many 1-2 and 1-3 live players make. They don't bet in situations where they have absolutely no business doing so. What is a donk bet? It's when a player bets into you when they're not supposed to have the betting lead. Despite the somewhat disrespectful sounding name, it doesn't necessarily mean that players who donk bet are weak. But most of the time, the clue is in the name. It's like a neon sign flashing, exploit me. In my years of coaching and playing live poker, I've noticed that recreational players donk bet for very predictable reasons. They're not making some sophisticated strategic play, they're usually just confused or uncomfortable. Most of the time, when such a player donk bets, they have one of two types of hands. First, they have some kind of a draw. Maybe they called you pre-flop raise with Queen Jack and now they have a gut shot. Or they have a medium strength hand that they're worried about. This can be top pair with a weak kicker or middle pair or a middling pocket pair that didn't connect with a flop. Here's what's crucial to understand though. In both scenarios, they don't have a really strong hand. If they flop 2 pair or better, most live poker players would check call to try to trap you. They'd be sitting there with a monster trying to look nonchalant while internally screaming, please bet into me. It's very rare that a typical live low stakes player will start putting a lot of money into the pot when they actually have a massive hand. And if they had complete air, they'd usually just check fold, so we can probably rule that one out as well. And this creates a great opportunity for us because we can now pinpoint quite exactly what they have. All we have to do is to figure out how to exploit this play. So now I'm going to show you a hand that I recently played where I exploited this play mercilessly, and after that I'll show you an example where someone donks and you have to be very careful. So here's the example of how I exploit such a move. The cutoff limped in a 1-2 game. I isolated him to 15 with king-queen offsuit on the button. The limper called. The flop came 9-6 deuce rainbow. The limper now donked 11 into the pot of 33. This is actually not a terrible donk bet because this board does favor the limper's range much more than mine. But I still think that the reason he donked was not that he understood the board texture, but because he probably had either a draw or some weak pair. At this point, I called. He gave me almost 4-1 pot odds. We have position and 2 overcards. I definitely won't fold in this spot, so I called. The turn was a 7, completing the rainbow. This is not a great card for me, and if he has 7-6, now he has 2 pair. If he has 8-7, he now has a pair to go with his open-ended straight draw. And if he bet the flop with 10-8 for a gut shot, he now has a straight. And indeed, he continued betting. This time he made it 17, which in poker body language translates to I still have something, but I'm still not sure what to do with it. If the turn card had favored my perceived range, I could have raised. But because we will never get him to fold 2 pair, a straight, or an open-ended straight draw, I definitely don't want to raise in this spot. If you want to fold at this point, that's fine. I'm pretty sure we don't have the best hand, so folding is okay. However, he is giving us great pot odds. We only have to be good 23% of the time by the river. And if a king or a queen are live outs, then we have around 12% equity. Plus, we might be able to get some more money on the river if we hit. But the main reason why I called was not because I was hoping to hit a king or a queen. Sure, that would be nice, but my plan was to take this pot away from my opponent like candy from a baby. Because here's the thing, he donked twice quite small. Unless he comes out firing a big bet on the river, he is super capped, which means that he doesn't have anything better than a weak pair. So what's our plan for the river? Well, it depends on the river card and on what he does, of course. If we river a king or a queen, we'll either call a small bet of his, or if he checks, then we'll go for value ourselves. If the river is a blank card and he checks, we can bet big and represent an overpair. If the river pairs the 6 or the 10, then we would probably just give up. And if the river is an overcard like an ace or a queen, we can possibly get away with a medium-sized bet to get him to fold. In this example, the river was a 3, so a complete blank. He checked and I bet 105 into the pot of 89. And yes, sure, there will be players who will snap you off with a 6. But there will be others who will fold top pair. Because look at our line from his point of view. We raised big pre-flop. We called his flop bet. We called his turn bet, and now we're over betting the river. Even an inexperienced live player will understand that your line screams strength louder than a fire alarm. In this example, my opponent actually tanked for about 2 minutes. He kept saying that he can only beat a bluff, which ironically was of course exactly what he was facing. Sometimes poker players are more accurate than they realize. And in the end, he folded. I congratulated him to make him feel good about the fold while stacking my chips. I know that in some games against really weak players in Texas, Florida or other states, nobody would ever fold top pair. But even then, this play can be successful because they then fold all weaker pairs. And if a small overbet doesn't do the job in your games, then maybe go twice the size of the pot. But you don't even always have to overbet the river to pull off the heist. Most of the time, you can take the pot away with much smaller investments, like in this example. Let's say you raise pre-flop with ace-king, get called by the big blind, and the flop comes jack 8-3 rainbow. Your opponent donk bets half pot. Even though you completely missed this flop, you can raise now. Why does this work? Because your opponent is probably betting with something like jack 9, pocket sixes, or maybe a draw like 10-9. When you raise, they're put in an awful spot. They know you raise pre-flop, so you could easily have ace-jack, king-jack, an overpair, or even a set. Many opponents will just fold, giving you the pot immediately. And what if they call? Well, then a fairly big bet on the turn often gets the job done. And you might not even have to bluff, because you might hit an ace or a king on the turn. But I have another strategy that I like even better than this one. You can just call the flop. If he bets small on a brick turn again, now you can raise. And if he checks, you now bet close to pot. This play looks so strong that most of your opponents will fold a mediocre hand. But earlier I promised to show you when you shouldn't attack donk bets. Here's an example. A tight player raises in the cutoff. A fish in the small blind calls. We have king-jack suited in the big blind and we call. The flop comes queen 7-5 rainbow. The small blind donked for 2/3 pot. And this is the situation where calling or raising would be a mistake. Why? Well, there are a few reasons. Number one, villain donked quite big. It wasn't the usual third pot bet, but he went 2/3 pot. This indicates that he might have a stronger hand. 2. The pot is multi-way. Even a smaller donk bet in a multi-way pot is often a stronger hand because most players understand that their middle pair isn't that strong if there are multiple opponents involved in the hand. And 3. There is a tight player to act behind us. He might have an overpair or top pair, so if we put more money in, not only do we have to bluff the fish in the small blind, but we also have to dodge a big hand from the original raiser. Therefore, in this spot, the best course of action by far is to fold. So be aware of donk bets in multi-way pots and if they bet around pot or bigger even in heads-up pots. Those bets tend to mean that they have a stronger hand. But a small donk bet from your typical live low stakes player in a heads up pot is one of the most reliable profit sources in live low stakes poker. They're essentially putting up a sign that says I'm not sure about my hand strength, and that gives you a massive opportunity to apply pressure and win pots. And if you want to see 4 more ways how you can easily exploit recreational players, check out this video here.